Want to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all. I got to teach these commissioners how to turn their phones on. Turn the call right at the same time. Who's calling you? Give us again. Very good. Welcome everyone to the February 15th, 2023. I'd just like to mention it's my 37th wedding anniversary today. 37 years. Huh? What an accomplishment. How the hell my wife put up with me? 37 years. Commissioner Gibbons will be here very shortly. Okay, minutes of the February 1st meeting. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Financial report and payment of the bills. We have a motion to approve the financial report. Got a motion and a second. Any discussion on that at all? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay, we have a budget amendment, Mr. Steve Repo of 2023-04. It's our fourth budget amendment of this fiscal, and it's to budget the Senator William H. Amos Fire Rescue and Ambulance funds received from Cecil County government, and it's transferred to the William M. Singerly Steam Fire Engine and Hook Ladder Company. It's in the amount of $5,203. Is this money, Steve, that is just transferred to us and we?
Yes, it's given to us from the county every year, and that we transferred entirely to Singerly.
Very good. Do we have a motion to approve budget amendment 2023-04?
So moved.
A motion, a second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, it is 12:04, but we're going to go ahead and start the public hearing. We've got a public hearing today on ordinance 1-2023, amending the town of Elkton zoning ordinance supplemental use regulations, section 33 and 34, allowing for medical use with designated areas in the TC, which is the town center zone, presented for introduction. Chip, you want to bring that up to us?
Well, give you a little background on the map here first. And on the whole scenario, since we eliminated the ability for new medical uses in the TC zone, which is the purple area, we've gotten a lot of requests for people who want to open medical businesses within that area. When this zone was created, it incorporated a hospital, the medical office building, and quite a few other doctors' offices that were already there. And then when we made the amendment to allow no new medical uses, you know, we're stuck with an area that's already got a lot of medical uses in it, but nobody else can go in. And then we worked with the hospital and asked them where do they look to expand in the future. So they sent us basically this outline within the TC zone of where they thought they would be going in the future. So I'll go over the boundaries with you. The Elkton Planning Commission held a public hearing Monday, February 6th, to consider amendments to zoning ordinance Article 12 supplementary use regulation section 33 medical use in TC zone and 34 counseling in the RO and TC zones. And what that is this is West Main Street here. So it's anything to the north of West Main Street, both sides of Bridge Street, Amtrak Railroad, and then west side of those. So anything within this area now, they can open a new medical use. And it's we have a lot of demand for it there. So it's not right on downtown Main Street over here that you're trying to keep open for retail and restaurants and things like that.
I think the one thing that we did a few years ago when we kind of put the suspension on any additional medical, it was because medical had changed. I mean, there was not only did you have a foot doctor, but you had a doctor that specialized in the pinky toe. You know, there's so many branches of different types of medicine. And I think that we've got a pretty good understanding of that today.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've come a long way.
We have, and we're in better understanding, and listen, we need to, Christiana Care is going to be a great partner, and, I'm glad you worked with them on this also. Go ahead.
I have a couple of questions. Wasn't one of the reasons why we stopped that, or we enforced that because of the drug use is being used in the town and city limits? I mean, wasn't that one of the reasons?
It was a small part of it, but more to conserve the spaces for restaurants and that type of use.
It was, yeah.
And with them having to come into special exception anywhere in the town now, they have to tell us specifically what they're going to do. So if they do something other than what they said, like start writing Suboxone prescriptions or something, then we have recourse to go after them and shut them down.
So that was the next question.
So we are going to maintain those restrictions, correct?
Well, you're going to have to do a special exception. And with that, they have to tell us what they're going to do, specifically what their practice is. And it has to go to the planning commission and board of zoning appeals. And then if they go in and start doing something different, then we can, go after them legally, say this is not what you approved for us.
But how do you know that? Once the medical starts, then
We have a lot of people who tell us things in town.
But then, okay, I'm just throwing these out because then we're going to
Can I?
on that other stuff.
Hi, this is Jean Minner. Can I hop in real quick on this?
Go ahead, Gene.
So the intent of this is to control any sort of negative impacts, such as excessive traffic or people not having enough space in the waiting room for the folks. Not so much as controlling the specific practice, but if the practice draws a large number of people, then how do we accommodate them in such a way that it doesn't create negative impacts, such as people standing around outside because the waiting room's not big enough or parking becoming a problem? That's really the intent of controlling it with the special exception.
So we'll have a special exception for any use, correct?
Any medical use.
Any medical use. I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's worked good so far.
Mm-hmm.
We've been doing it for a couple of years now.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, no, I'm trusting your expertise.
Yeah, and we have a lot of medical uses within this area already.
Is there certain criteria you have to meet for special exception?
Well, they can't be a clinic, which would be a methadone type of scenario. No, they have to present before the boards,
To see if it's accepted
Yeah, and I
use
mean-
in that
Yeah,
particular
and most of what we're
location.
getting is requests for general practitioners, that type of thing, nothing, yeah. And like I said, it's already a lot within that area.
That's true.
Besides the hospital and the medical office buildings, there's probably 4 or 5 other, there's a dentist on High Street, and 4 or 5 other doctor's offices already within that area. There's not that many buildings available anyway. So the Berkeley building would be one that they've been looking to go in there for quite some time. And that's why we are taking the properties on those sides of Bridge Street, so that his building, the old used to be Berkeley building, is within that. But it's a good building for that, has an elevator in it. It's a nice building.
Well, I think we did our due diligence there. You've got some public input through the planning commission and with working with the hospital. I don't see how anyone can be upset with what we've done here.
No, I think it's a
Good plan. And then we got a special exception so we can control.
yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Anyone else have anything to state or talk about on this? It is a public hearing. Is there anyone in the public that has any questions, any comments? Anyone online that has any questions or comments? Hearing, seeing none. This public hearing is closed. Thank you, Chip. Thank you. So all we're doing is presenting this for introduction. We're not voting on it for for it to be, adopted yet at this point, but do we have a motion to, accept ordinance 1-2023 or present it for introduction? Got a motion?
Second.
In a second, any discussion for just for introduction purposes? There'll be another hearing at the next meeting, I guess. Hearing none, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Lou, town administrator.
I don't have anything that's.
All right, very good. I got a few things on the agenda. Reappointment on the zoning of Board of Zoning Appeals. I'd like to reappoint Ms. Shirley Hicks, which her term will expire on January 31st, 2026. Do we have a motion to accept Mrs. Hicks?
Second.
Got a motion and a second? All in favor? Aye. I'd like to reappoint Ms. Dawn Schwartz to the Board of Appeals. Her term would expire on January 31st, 2026. Do we have a motion to approve? Approve, and do we have a second?
Second.
Hearing, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, I want to mention to the board that we do have, I think, 3 openings on the Board of Appeals, and we have to find someone. We have to find some people. Okay, reappointment of the Planning Commission. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Dave Wiseman to a term that expires February 29th, 2028. We got a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on Dave Wiseman? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We have 2 vacancies on the Planning Commission. We need to find 2 members to serve on the Planning Commission. Reappointment of the Board of Housing Appeals. I'd like to reappoint Mr. Chuck Parsons to a term which expires January 31st, 2026. We have a motion to accept Mr. Parsons.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on Mr. Parsons? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm not sure if we need anyone on the housing appeals, but I think we hear it when our fire company comes in that you can't find volunteers, and we're having a very difficult time ourselves finding volunteers to serve on our committees. That's something that we need to take a look at. Okay, a couple other things I have. I'm actually traveling to Annapolis this evening, tonight and tomorrow. I'll be staying overnight in Annapolis for the Maryland Mayor's Convention. During my time there, I'm going to be get an opportunity to meet with the governor tomorrow. But tonight, I'll do my best to behave myself and be in the
That sounds gonna be rough.
to be in the for the best interest of the town. The one thing that I will have some discussions with Delegate Carter and Delegate Chris is funding for the Frenchtown Wharf Park. It looks pretty promising. I just got to firm up a few things with him in regards. So that's all good news. Let's see, what else do I have here on my little note? All right, Commissioner Massimiano, do you have anything today?
Just that I'm still working with Dave Tiberi and Carmen. Just listening. It's as bad as mine.
I know, Carmen Fiera.
Yeah, but I'm working with them on installing the cameras around town. I had a follow-up meeting on Monday with PNC Bank, and they seem to be totally on board. I'm just waiting to hear back from the higher ups, but they have assured me that they're going to cooperate.
Very good, excited about that.
And that's all I have.
Commissioner Ponder? Commissioner Gibbons?
The budget is in process, isn't
It is. And I'm glad you brought that up because I had one other additional thing I could bring up about the budget. Yesterday, Steve Repo had sent over to us that the State of Maryland Department of Assessments and Taxation are sent over that our constant yield tax could be reduced, quite frankly. We have total in July 1st, 2023 assessments The town of Elkton assessments have increased $103 million. The assessments that went up generate about 71,000 additional dollars in real property tax. But I want to stress to everyone that that number is at the lowest it will be. Most of that growth took place in the enterprise zone. And at the enterprise zone, Steve, help correct me here if I'm wrong, but we're only receiving about 10%.
Right, and then the state will kick in half of that, so we need half that, but that's phased out over a 10-year period.
So at the
And then we'll get the full assessment on the value of the property.
so we're about 90%, I think.
That's where we start out, yeah.
Yeah, we start out at 90% and it goes down. So just from quite frankly, the $103 million was a large portion of it was no question about the one part of Southfields. The Trammell Crow Tree, the piece. Okay, I interrupted you, so
And,
back at you.
and, Human Resources, have you spoken with any of our employees or with question to the budget or what's coming forth or their requests or their desires?
May I approve? Yeah, come on down, Andy.
Hi, Commissioner, Mayor. I haven't spoke to them directly. I am putting together something for the workshop for March. But I did send a survey through the PA4 system to get input, anonymous input from the employees. Results for that should come at the end of next week. I gave the employee the opportunity to weigh in on that survey. It's just basically it's just two simple questions. How did you feel about the discretionary bonus last year, and what are their thoughts on their desires for this coming year and fiscal year 2023? So I'll have those results by the end of next week, and I can share that with the board during our presentation in March.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
And I'll imagine your gentleman's commendations today was very good. You're here again at our meeting. You said you'll constantly be here. In a brief word, you can tell me how it went since I was late.
Yeah. Yes, it's setting presentation.
I thought we were.
So far, so good. Yeah. So far, so good. Now, if you want.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not holding so.
There was one other thing I'm glad Charlie brought up about the budget. Lewis and I had a real quick conversation yesterday, very good conversation. I'd like for the town, I'm going to ask Lewis to move forward with Steve Repole and maybe move forward. I think we already got Davenport, the finance folks, under contract with us. But I'd like to have a 5-year projection of what we think maybe our expenses are going to be and what our income revenue is going to be, to give us a little bit better understanding of where we are. And if that makes any sense to everybody. I think it's important because we got a lot of growth. I continue to say we've got a lot of robust growth. I know that I looked at the once again, I looked at the projections of the Southfields, and I'm going to have you guys have a second here to talk if you want to speak. But one of the, I look back and Southfields gets built out, there's $2.4 million in additional revenues that's coming in. And I just like to know how that plays in with the requests that we're getting from the fire company, the requests that we have with the policing, the requests of how it's going to do with our employees looking at future pay increases. I just think that we need to have a little bit better model because, listen, I tell everyone I sell duct tape. I'm a duct tape salesman. I don't have a lot of experience when it comes to these things, and I'd like to have a better handle on it. I think the whole board agrees. You guys agree? I think we need to see those done. Mm-hmm. So Lou, you and Steve decide who's best to move forward with.
Well, I think before the board, Steve and I move on it, I think we'll invite Davenport, their rep here, to talk to the board about what the capabilities that they have with respect to what you're doing, because a lot of things that a financial advisor will rely on is policy of the town. how the board views the next 5 years, for example, about what they anticipate, you know, do you anticipate increases in revenue from real property taxes or whatever? Because that'll be a driving force behind what those budgets might be and in terms of both revenue and expenses. But I can get a hold of Joe Mason or Jennifer and see if they can come or be on virtually for that matter.
That would be great.
That'd be a good discussion, I think, for the workshop. I think I set it up for the March workshop.
That would be great. Really appreciate it, Liz. Okay,
One of them, Earl, thanks for calling me. My day was mixed up. But also on the screen is Nathaniel Simmons. He's a trustee in my church. I guess he came online today to see how the process worked. I believe he will be coming in on behalf of the trustees to present some items for clarification next week. Next time we have it.
absolutely. Glad to have you on board watching.
I asked him to unmute, so.
Okay, anyone else have anything to say?
Well, thank you very much. This is Nate Simmons. Yes, I'm just wanted to understand how the process worked. There's some issues and stuff that I'd like to bring forth to the board and also to the historic district commission. So thank you for allowing me to participate today.
Thank you, sir. Looking forward to hearing from you. Okay, this is the time of the meeting. We open up the floor and I see Mr. Jackson's here. He looks like he's ready to say a couple of positive words today. Come on down and say a few words. I'm glad you're here.
Good afternoon, Ray Jackson, Southfield's developer. I'd like to start, if I could, just to clarify a couple of things about the Frenchtown Wharf project, if you don't mind. So,
yeah.
What I originally represented to you when I first came in here and presented the concept of Frenchtown Wharf Regional Park, I stated that there were not going to be any costs associated with the town while we were vetting the process. So what we've done, my company has done, is we've engaged an engineer. We've been communicating with Gene Menner, the planning director, to do some preliminary studies, just to make sure it's feasible, okay? In conjunction, so I've engaged them and I'm paying those fees. There's no cost at all to the town. What we have done, and I've discussed this and I made this presentation to the board probably 4 or 5 months ago, was we were going to request through the state of Maryland some planning monies in order to continue that study. And that'll go a little deeper. That'll talk about the lineal waterfront on Elk River. It'll talk about wetlands. It'll talk about forest conservation. We'll have a proper survey of the property done. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper. So we are making a request of approximately $500,000 that would go to the town. Those monies would be controlled by the town, and then the town could then start engaging some engineers and doing some of the work on their own as well. So the town would not incur any cost. It would be a grant from the state of Maryland that we're applying for. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I have been communicating with both the delegates. I've been communicating with the governor's budget staff and helping to formulate that request. So just wanted to reiterate that to you. So there is no cost that the town will incur. It would anything that moving forward in anticipation of planning of the park would be funded by a grant by the state of Maryland. Okay, so no cost incurred by the town. I want to update you, as I told you I would do, because we're getting ready to start doing some work. So I think it's important for me to come in here once a month and just update everybody. First of all, I do want to say a bunch of very positive things. KCI, the staff, everybody's been working in conjunction with us, and I'm very grateful for that. So thank you. We have what we hope to be our last submission in for infrastructure. So that was submitted last month. KCI is reviewing that. I'm sure Gene's reviewing that. That's for the water, the sewer, the boulevard, the things that we need to do to get started. We anticipate that coming back this month, first part of March. So realistically, we will apply for what's called a right of entry, and we'll want to start moving dirt to cut the boulevard in and start preparing for the major work. Again, the major work is the water lines and the sewer lines for the entire development go in first and connect to the existing city infrastructure. We have a water tower that we've already contracted for. It's already 4 months under construction. It's being built off site and will be erected here. That process is already underway and is going very well. We have to put in what's called a sewer pump station, which is got to be permitted by the Maryland Department of the Environment. That's an elongated process. That's well on its way. So all the main stuff, including the boulevard, all of that stuff we call the infrastructure. So all of that's underway. We hope to be permitted at least for the first part of that in early March, so we can start in March. So the plan is then we have to effectuate what we've already started, which is the special tax district. So the special tax district is an instrument that we're using internal of Southfields, that the property owners of Southfields fund, that will pay for that infrastructure. The work is about $15 million. So it is, you might recall, I came in here a couple of months ago, said the interest rates have changed, the cost of the budget of that infrastructure work has changed. So what we're going to do is over the next course of the next month or so, we're going to be finalizing our budget for the infrastructure. Certain things we're going to put in, certain things we're going to self-fund. So I will continue to disclose that to you on and talk about that. We hope to have that budget finalized this month. So I'll share that with you the next time I come in, and then what the plan is on when we actually want to effectuate and issue those bonds. Most likely we're gonna have a public groundbreaking probably in April when the weather breaks a little bit. I'm going to ask that the county officials come, that the staff gets invited. I really want to show a show of force. I would appreciate everyone's attendance in that. I think it's a good thing for the town of Elkton. So, you know, realistically, April, maybe first part of May when that will happen. I'll make sure I communicate well in advance, make sure we coordinate the dates. Similar to what Trammell Crow did when they did their groundbreaking. Okay, so it'll be a ceremonial type thing. I would ask that the mayor and the commissioners attend, please, if you can, and then the staff, and we want to invite everybody. Most likely have an event afterwards, a social event at Patriots Glen, to celebrate, you know, where we are and what we've accomplished to date. Is Chris here? Yes. I want to ask Chris Sheehan from Mesereau, who has made a couple of presentations to the board as well. I wanted to give you very quickly a state of the economy and let you know where we are with regards to selling of bonds and how that's all going to shake out, so that you understand where we are in the processes. And then if you have any questions afterwards, I'll update you. But again, we're making great progress. Everybody's cooperating with one another. I'm very, very appreciative of that. And we're, I'd say, a month or so away from finally breaking ground.
Perfect.
You got a second yet?
Chris, I'd like to first start off by saying, hey, listen, thank you for attending one of our meetings, but I really appreciate the weekly notes that you've been sending to our town administrator back and forth, and giving me a better understanding of how these bonds would work.
Well, thank you so much, everyone, for your time today, and I appreciate the opportunity to sit here before you. You know, I went back and looked at the date from which I did my first presentation to today, and the number that stood out to me that I thought I would just share with each of you is that the interest rate market is 258 basis points higher than where it was when I first sat here almost 2 years ago, which I think is, you know, I think we were all well aware that interest rates have gone up considerably. You know, inflationary pressures, I think, have not been unnoticed by everyone. I bought a soda at the grocery store, and it's $2.50 yesterday, where, you know, 3 years ago it would have been $1 to get a cold soda. But, you know, that is the world we're in right now. You know, there are higher rates, costs are higher. And as a result, you know, it just makes projects slightly more challenging to finance, given that, you know, the higher the interest rate goes, you know, that affects what can be financed and what the revenues can support. So in this instance, this 258 basis points delta, has essentially, converted the Southfields bond, from a net funding amount of about 11.8 to about 9.6 right now. So that is in true dollars.
Now, what does that mean? Help me understand what that means.
Well, that means the developer here has $2+ million of costs that he now has to shoulder for public infrastructure. That's a lot of money for anybody, but certainly, in a project that has more cost beyond that is something, just wanted to put out there and recognize that, the team is doing the best they can, but, the world we live in is considerably different now. And I think we need to be a little bit more creative as we move forward with the process. I know, Louis, you'd asked me, I believe it was last week, if I had a sense on the developer's schedule. And this is, a hurdle I think they're trying to solve, but I think as Ray eloquently put, I think we're trying to wrap this up by springtime. So that we can start building here in the town of Elkton, and you can start seeing, this development mature and take shape.
How? I'm just trying to go back through memory now. What is the total amount the special taxing district is asking for? Was it 15 million?
Well, it's yes and no. So what was authorized under the ordinance that Kimberly Vin helped draft and was introduced by Louis in the town here was for a full amount of $15 million. But that does not mean that the developer is in receipt of $15 million of funds. There are other types of funds that have to be created as a requirement of bond investors for additional protection. So they need what's called the debt service reserve fund. That is money that will be held in perpetuity. So if there's ever an instance where there's a shortfall in revenue, bond investors would tap that fund to make themselves whole, in that year's debt service payment. In addition, there is a supplemental fund that is capitalizing interest. And what that means is Ray will start building on day one, but he's not going to have the benefit from the home builder and home buyer of that revenue being realized. So we're going to pre-fund some upfront interest. And the net sum of those, is about $4 million. And then when you subtract out professional fees, you're more or less, it gets you to around, somewhere between 9 and 11, depending on where the interest rate is. So that's kind of the number the developers left to work with respect to, financing all of the infrastructure costs associated with Southfield's development. And I would note that infrastructure is new infrastructure that's coming to the town. That is not something that's going to be owned by the Southfields group or any developer entity. That is new municipal infrastructure, that the town will now have the benefit of.
So let's say it's $10 million worth of new infrastructure. So the infrastructure you're putting in would be, you're putting it all in right at the very beginning.
Well, and that's what we're going to start communicating with you. So there's specific infrastructure that has to go in immediately. That's the water tower, the sewer pump station, the boulevard, landscaping, lighting, power, stormwater management, things to unlock the parcels on the west side of 213.
Mm-hmm.
The other portion of that are what's called off-site improvements, basically state highway improvements that really get triggered by the use and occupancy of the sports complex. Okay, so originally what our plan and so they're phased in. And that's all dictated by the state of Maryland State Highway with the county and you all. Okay, so everybody looks at that. So there's phased in infrastructure offsite. Okay, for instance, here's an example. We have to put a signal in on 213, right? So that signal and the use of that signal is determined by the density, by how many houses are built, by how many apartments are occupied, by whether or not retail is there or not. So we will build the traffic signal, but that traffic signal will blink initially. Okay. State highway will tell us when it gets turned on. We don't control that. But there are other offsite improvements that aren't triggered until the sports complex is built out. We're going to defer that. So we're not going to capitalize that initially in the special tax district. What we're going to do is we're going to finance everything that needs to be built for the west side of 213 in order to build out the development, the residential, Mike's piece, the sports complex, and all of the retail. So that'll all be built in. There's one clarification of this too. I want to say. The individual property owners are the ones that pay into the special tax district, right? So I personally, my company owns all the ground right now. So I'm responsible for that. When you put in the infrastructure and you unlock the ability to sell to DR Horton, right? To sell to Greystar, to sell to Alliance for the retail, they take on that responsibility then of those special tax district fees. With DR Horton, so DR Horton will underwrite all 150 of those homes, and they'll be responsible for that payment until each of those homes is got a use and occupancy, it's sold, and then the homeowner then would start paying those fees. That's kind of what the flow is.
Okay.
So what Chris made reference to is there's a period of time that you're in construction. So you need to be able to finance the in this case, $15 million worth of work, but you're not able to produce any revenue. So they're going to accrue interest. We're going to prepay interest. That's what he was alluding to there.
So during construction, we would, that interest would then be used to repay the bonds that were issued, such that upon completion, and now you have transferred parcels to Horton or Greystar, they're now contributing to the repayment of the bonds.
Is there anything that I'm going to say that the town could do, for example, that could help cut that number from?
To help cut the gap?
Yes.
There certainly are, and obviously this comes back to the town's appetite, but there are a number of ways in which the town could potentially provide some credit support behind the bonds, not for the purpose of repaying the bonds, but rather to bring the level of interest rate down as a result of having the town's some form of credit enhancement behind it. That would have a material impact on the rate, and would allow for the bonds to be sold at denominations that the town could participate in. We like to encourage when appropriate retail participation, which means the community gets to buy into the community as well, if they so choose to do so. But that would be one form of how we could bring the rate down, with the working agreement here that it's not really, we're not doing this for the town to take control of the land or owner operator or anything other than just try to bring the interest rate down.
Would McGuire Woods develop an agreement to that effect?
McGuire Woods? We certainly have a conversation
on council.
Yes, I'm sure they would.
Because I would have to review that if it has any impact on our fiscal.
That's correct. And I would actually take that one further and, suggest that, maybe you bring Kimberly Min into that conversation as well, because she's representing the town there. But I think it's an idea that is certainly worth exploring. And there's different forms of enhancement. It doesn't necessarily mean, we have to put the full faith and credit of the town. We can put certain, facilities in place that limit the town's exposure, but still provide the benefit of a lower rate of interest.
Let me interject one other thing if I could, real quick. Sorry to interrupt. One of the other things that happens so we had to subdivide the property, obviously, in order to sell it. We have to supply the infrastructure in order to sell it. Those are what's called conditions of sale. Okay. So one of the things that happens is as the special tax district is secured and financed and escrowed it here with the town, you guys are third party to that money. You endorse those checks with me to pay the vendors, just full disclosure, but what happens is we then start settling these properties, right? So you were talking about the tax basis in the town. Well, the tax basis on the west side of 213 will exceed $200 million. Okay, so this is how that starts. So we will be able to sell the property to Greystar. And that will be the first start of the increase in the tax basis. So there'll be a settlement be triggered through State Department of Assessment and Taxation. There'll be a new assessment of that property. That'll go to the net benefit of the town through property taxes. Same thing with D.R. Horton. And then it becomes a snowball. As D.R. Horton builds and sells homes, those settlements get triggered at State Department of Assessment and Taxation. That increases your tax base again. So it's an ongoing process. And I think it's important that we probably communicate with Davenport with you and share with Davenport what the projections are of Horton, what the projections are of Greystar, what Mike's projections are, so that you can fully understand what the build out time is. Because now we have a much better idea based on the approval of the permitting.
Well, that goes back to the request for Davenport to see what our revenues are moving forward. So we know.
Right.
Because I think, you know, I wanted to talk about your feasibility in a minute too. I want to find out a little bit about that, but this is important for us to understand. I mean, is it, I remember our first projections, we were looking at, I might have mentioned it before you came in, Chris, but if I remember right, it was $2.4, $2.5 million in direct money to us. Is that correct? I mean, direct real estate taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's correct. I mean, my back of the envelope number suggests, you know, once the enterprise zone credits burn off, you know, the town is looking to be in direct receipt of, I think, approximately $2.7 million, which is, that's every year. And that's just, you know, the combination of Trammell plus Southfields. That doesn't even take into account, you know, other development that's organically and naturally occurring within the town.
And when does that kick in?
That would kick in as they're building.
It has already started to kick in. You've received some benefit from the Trammell Crow assessment. Now it's obviously abated by the enterprise zone considerably, but the town is starting to see that organic growth occurring on its tax base.
Very good.
Can you explain to me quickly or one time how the enterprise zone affects it long term?
Sure. So the enterprise zone is a tax abatement program. So it reduces the taxes over a 10-year period.
Oh, it's a 10.
So it starts, so the first years of the work, so it's 80, 80, and then it declines 70, 60, 50, 30. So it's a declining abatement, but the initial years have the most impact to, you know, the town's, you know, kind of bottom line.
And it's an incentive to bring in development, obviously, especially, you know, Trammell Crow in that first building's got $100 million invested. So, and I think you all are probably aware, but we recently completed a second transaction with Trammell Crow. We bought the Williams property in front of, right on Route 40, next to the old Happy 40 location, next to Apple's Mitsubishi dealership. And we are Apple Ford is buying another 6 acres from us. They're building another car dealership there. They haven't called a planning commission yet, but they will here shortly. But Trammell Crow bought another 20 acres from us adjacent to their existing 250 acres. They've already been in front of the planning commission for a 300,000 plus square foot building that they're going to start as soon as possible. So again, that's in the enterprise zone. So it'll be a sliding scale, but they're already, you know, preparing to make that other $40 million investment. You know, I'm not going to cloud the conversation, but there's a couple other developments that are on the table now that you're going to be hearing about shortly. That coincide with our Southfields development. Again, national builders coming in here and investing in the town, and you know, it's becoming all inclusive. You know, my immediate goal obviously is to unlock the west side of 213. So that's what our focus is, and that's what our goal is. We have to pivot a little bit on the special tax districts. I'm financing this stuff on my own right now. So I'm paying all the bills for the water tower, and when the road gets cut in and you know, we ordered pipe and blah blah blah. I'm not being funded yet by the special tax district. So we're incurring those costs. So there's light at the end of the tunnel. good positive
So
stuff.
we appreciate everything you're doing.
It's a process. Thank you.
Is there, do you have any plans for senior, has that gone anywhere?
So, yes, we do have plans for senior housing. D1 is slated for senior housing. We have not had success in marketing senior housing right now. The problem is, to be very candid with you, is the capital markets. So meaning investors, meaning people that will lend the money to the senior developers. Okay. So like Erickson Retirement Community, for instance, is privately funded. Redwood Capital owns that. They write the checks themselves. But a typical typical senior housing developer who wants to build 100 units is going to go get equity somewhere and going to go get debt somewhere. Those sources are not existent right now because of what Chris has talked about. The increasing cost to build it, but also the interest. Though that's going to change. And I'll tell you what else will change when dirt starts getting moved. People still think that it's a pie in the sky. People still think this isn't going to happen. When they see dirt moving, then they realize, when they see a water tower being erected and they realize, that's when then the appetite becomes more. So to answer your question, yes, it's still proposed. But to be very candid with you, we have not had any success in bringing in a partner.
And so many people are moving to Delaware just to get out of their own, into a place where it's just more convenient for them. We lack that here, so
I agree
I
wholeheartedly.
think you have a monopoly, other than a couple, 2 senior apartments we have downtown, right? That's it. Well, no, there's a couple more. There's a couple more, but what's it like in your waiting list? To even try to get them. But thank you.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Anyone else have any questions for these guys?
No, I think the reports are,
I think it's very helpful.
yeah, very detailed,
Thank
easy to understand. We appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'd like to, Mike, can you give us an update on the feasibility?
Sure, absolutely. You know, we've been working diligently with SFC that as a matter of fact, Chris Sheehan had recommended to us as the national authority on doing these kinds of surveys. They've been very communicative. We've worked back and forth on some of the information that they provided. You know, they're very helpful on understanding the different sports that we're running and work with us on our numbers to make sure that we're providing you with a feasibility study that we know at the end of the day is going to hold water, to be candid. So as an example, they have an understanding of women's lacrosse and whether or not you can run your own tournaments or whether you have to partner with a larger national organization versus baseball and softball, which has a different model. We've taken those models and applied them to our numbers, and it's taking a little time. We also have had some changes in some partners. You know, Ray had worked with Alliance Capital for the commercial piece, set up some conversations with them. They provided some fantastic information, which is very promising. And to be honest, at the end of the day, we want to give you a full picture. Yeah, we don't want to give you half the picture and say, oh, by the way, we just had one more partner come in, and it's taking a little bit longer than we had originally hoped. But it's all promising. I can assure you that if it wasn't, I probably wouldn't be sitting here right. So thank you.
Very good.
Questions about the answer?
Quick update. I just got a notice from the engineer. We just received our final comments from KCI this morning for the Boulevard Road storm drain plans. We're progressing as charged. So just a good update from KCI this morning. So thank you.
Thank you. Listen, who would have thought 8 or 9 years ago, we had this conversation sitting in here talking about building a whole new section on the south side of town and the old Crouchy farm. And I sent over to Lewis this morning the video you sent over to me about the sportsplex, and Lewis said, and it goes back to one of the very first person. He said, this looks like something that would be in Florida, Disney-esque. You know, it really is. It's really some project. Let's just hope we can get to the finish line. I think we will.
Thank you for your support.
All right, anyone, have anything to say for the good of the town of Elkton?
I have one question before we adjourn.
Yep.
I've made notes that we need 3 people on the Board of Appeals, 2 on the Planning Commission, correct? How often do these boards meet so that
Monthly.
just once a month? And what day is it, Louis?
The first Monday after the town meeting,
That'd be the planning commission.
the planning commission.
Yeah, the Board of Zoning Appeals is one of the, I believe, the third Wednesday.
Oh.
I beg your pardon, third Thursday.
Third Thursday?
Correct.
Do you know the times
6 o'clock.
for both? Just so, if I approach anybody, I'll have those answers for them. Thank you.
Chip,
I just want to add, we had the pre-construction meeting sheets this morning, so you should start to see some activity out there. I believe they have a scheduled opening date, late August or early September.
wow, that's fast.
Yeah.
That is great. If you have any more news on Maloney Road and several,
No.
it's not coming.
The property owner still has not gotten back to me. I'll keep trying.
But that's an example of the capital markets. Chip and I were discussing that earlier. So that's an example of 7-Eleven corporate most likely dictating to the developer that they can't move forward because of capital. So I don't know that definitively, but that's an example of what can, stop a project like that.
Very good. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.